On today's Locked On Giants podcast, we're going to take a look at the Matthew Stafford trade possibilities. If he's available, would he solve the Giants' quarterback problem? What would be the cost? What would be the impact? And much more. That's coming your way next here on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all our written work. And as always, welcome on in to our Blue Crew community members, our everydayers, our newcomers, and everybody in between. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, on today's Locked On Giants podcast, the rumors, if you will, of Matthew Stafford to the Giants seem to be kind of picking up a little bit of steam, which is kind of interesting because the Rams haven't officially said that they are going to trade him. I think the Rams are at a point now where they're going to try to make something happen with Stafford with his contract so that the two sides can basically, remain together. But if not, it has been rumored that Matthew Stafford will go on the trade block. And, this possibility, if he does go on the trade block, of the Giants being interested, it potentially has legs, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. The Giants, and as we all know, they need a quarterback. All right. So let me explain why this potentially has legs. Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll, as we all know, have been given a grace period by ownership. They have got to win games this year, regardless of who the quarterback is. They have got to win. They have got to show that this roster that they're going to assemble this offseason is better, has plugged some of the holes that were exposed last year, and is basically on an upward trend. Now, if the objective is they've got to win more games, can they do that necessarily with a rookie quarterback? You don't say no. I mean, it can be done. We saw it done with, Washington and Jaden Daniels. But then again, that was a new regime. They didn't have to worry about if, Jaden Daniels flopped and didn't win as many games as he did last year. They didn't have to worry if they were going to lose their jobs. Little different situation here for the Giants. All right. Schoen and Daboll, they need to have wins. They need to show John Mara and Steve Tisch that by the time the 2025 season is over, the team has gone upward and not backwards like it's been going the last couple of years. So enter a veteran quarterback like Matthew Stafford. All right. Matthew Stafford has a history of winning. He has been clutch over his career. He still has enough mobility. He's been there, done that, seen a lot. It's nothing is really going to, phase him, I think. Unlike a rookie who maybe just needs to adjust to the speed of the game. And, having a veteran quarterback on the roster with that kind of experience, now if you take a rookie, which I do think the Giants will probably look to do, now you can let the kid see and properly develop. You don't have to rush him into the lineup until he is absolutely ready. So you take some of the pressure off of the kid. And as you know, folks, I've said before that that's what the Giants did with Daniel Jones. They rushed him into the lineup. And, between that and the constant changeover in the coaching staff and the offensive philosophies, Daniel Jones just wasn't set up to, have success in the NFL. So that all being said, Matthew Stafford, we give them a mulligan, if you will, in that, if the Giants decide that, hey, we don't really like Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward at number 3, so we're going to punt on taking a quarterback in the first round, or at least at number 3. Now they have that option to take another player at the best possible position, whether that be an Abdul Carter, if he is on the board, whether that be a Travis Hunter, if he is on the board. So the Giants have options, including if they want to, they could potentially trade down at number 3. If they say, okay, you know what? In free agency, we got ourselves a shutdown cornerback. So maybe we can get away with not taking a Travis Hunter. We don't need, Abdul Carter may not be on the board. So maybe we trade down a little bit and we recoup what we potentially give up to get Matthew Stafford. Now that leads us to the next point. What might it cost the Giants to get Matthew Stafford in a trade? Well, you know that if he does become available in a trade, the Rams are probably going to ask for a first-round pick. And as Adam Schefter said on, I think it was on Pat Leonard's podcast, there is no way that the Giants should give up the third overall pick. No way, right? I wouldn't do it. If the Rams insisted on it, I'd say, okay, you know what, guys? That's a deal breaker. See ya. I don't think the Rams are going to get a first-round pick for Stafford. 37 years old, and while he is still a very good quarterback, you just don't give up a first-round pick for a guy who's basically approaching the end of his career. If he was 31, 32, I could see making a case for that. Not at 37, all right? So if I'm the Giants, my offer to the Rams would be 2 second-round picks, one this year and one in 2026. Now, again, if the Giants trade down a little bit, maybe they swap places with the Raiders and the Raiders get, one of the quarterbacks that maybe the Giants don't want, maybe the Giants can get an extra second-round pick out of the Raiders or whoever they trade down with. And that can be used to recoup and get, what they spend to, potentially get Matthew Stafford. The other thing is, for those of you saying, well, you got to take a quarterback at number 3. If you get Stafford, that kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off of you, because if you're not in love with any of the quarterbacks in this class for the third overall pick, you could potentially wait till the day 2 to get your guy if you want him, or you could trade back into the bottom of the first round to take advantage of the 5th-year option, or you can wait until next year. And if you get Stafford, you redo his contract, which the Giants would do if they acquired him via trade, rip up the last 2 years of his current deal, give him a brand new deal, which lowers his base salary, give him the signing bonus that he's looking for, and have an out after the second year. It's, that takes care of everything. You've got your quarterback for this year. You've got a quarterback for next year. So regardless of when you bring a rookie on board, you have stability again at that position. So there's a lot of reasons to potentially explore this trade if you're the Giants, if Stafford becomes available on the market. Now, there's also disadvantages, starting with Stafford's durability over the last several years. He's had assorted injuries, and I don't believe he has played a full season since 2021, right? So that's obviously a concern. So that's where, you want to have a good second option on the roster, whether that option is your rookie. If it's not a rookie, maybe use a low-cost veteran. Maybe it's Tommy DeVito who's going to be back. I don't know the answer, but certainly that's a problem that, you have to account for. And not just, even if it wasn't Stafford, it could be for any quarterback that the Giants might bring in as their bridge guy. You have to account for what happens if that guy gets injured. So, to me, when I look at the pros and cons of potentially trading for Stafford, so long as the Rams aren't going to dig in and say, we've got to have a number 1 pick, I don't see a whole lot in terms of cons against this. I really don't. And, maybe that's not the guy that the Giants brass is looking for, but I'll tell you what, I would explore it if I'm them. I would consider it. I think there's enough evidence there to consider it if the price is right. If Stafford's side is willing to agree to a redone contract where, maybe his base salary gets lowered down to, I don't know, $5 million, which would encompass the $4 million signing bonus, or not signing bonus, I'm sorry, the $4 million roster bonus that he's owed in 2025. So you lower his base salary. You've got him, you give him the prorated signing bonus. His cap number it drops. And now you still have enough money if you want to get a wide receiver 2 in free agency, if you want to get a cornerback in free agency. Now you've got options, and you don't have to necessarily go and redo contracts to afford those options if you play your cards right. So, basically, folks, free agency is going to be a big, big tell as to how the Giants might pursue this in the draft. It's going to tell us a lot. There's going to be a lot of clues to look for. And as we go through the free agency period, which starts in about a month, we'll go through all that. I'll walk you through that every step of the way. So coming up next, all right, let's say the Giants don't go for Matthew Stafford. Let's say they want one of these young quarterbacks. Let's say that quarterback Shedeur Sanders. Is that the smart move? Are there concerns? Well, I think there are. We'll talk about that right after this. Hey, Giant fans, when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. And there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you could stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. The app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. We are still 5 days a week here on Locked On Giants. There is no NFL offseason anymore, just scenes. And even though this week is going to be kind of quiet, but it's eventually going to lead up to the combine, and there's going to be plenty to talk about. So we're just going to keep rolling right along with the schedule and just trying to bring you content on a variety of topics. And, as always, if there's something specific that you want me to cover, whether it's the salary cap, the basics of the salary cap or whatever, let me know. I aim to please as best as I can. So I know a lot of times some of you have written in and said, hey, why don't you do a show about this or a segment about that? And I actually take those into consideration, and I actually have done some of those suggestions. So whatever you guys want to hear, let me know. And if I can do it, I will do it. All right. In this segment, let's say the Giants full bloom in love with Shedeur Sanders. Would that be a bad thing for the Giants? Well, from a talent perspective, no, it would not. Shedeur Sanders, I think, is going to be a very good NFL quarterback. But there is a concern about Shedeur Sanders. This is a concern that I had even before this was mentioned by Paul Schwartz of the New York Post, who wrote about it, I think, in his, I want to say it was Saturday column, or it might have been his Friday column. And that concern is the ecosystem in which Shedeur Sanders has progressed as a quarterback, specifically his father, Deion. Now, look, let's not take anything away from Deion Sanders. The man in his day was a heck of a ball player. He is now a successful head coach at the college level. He understands the game. He understands all the little tricks and nuances that, are played in the NFL. And he's a parent. That's most important. He is a parent. And like any good parent, he wants the best possible for his children. All right. If he didn't, I question if there was something, wrong with him, because what parent doesn't want the best for their kid? But that being said, there is a fine line here that is creating a little bit of a concern with the Giants. And that is, will Deion, if the Giants were to take Shedeur, will Deion become a stage parent, or will he just simply be someone in the background who serves as, maybe an advisor to his son? All right. Now there's a very fine line there. A stage parent is somebody who just totally takes control, who, points fingers, who could just be an absolute nightmare to work with. And the concern with, with Shedeur Sanders, and it's kind of unfair if you think about it, because the kid himself, he's a good kid. All right. But so it's kind of unfair to even say this, but it is something that needs to be talked about. If something goes wrong, if the offensive line allows 7 sacks against him, or if the Giants don't win games, is Deion Sanders going to speak up and criticize the Giants organization? Is he going to start a firestorm by saying, oh, if my son had blocking, this wouldn't happen? Or if the receivers weren't dropping my son's passes, he'd have a better quarterback rating or whatever. That's what I think the concern is. Now, I would like to think that Coach Prime will have, his own thing to worry about out in Colorado as the coach of the Buffaloes. I do know, I should say I would be surprised if he's not tuning in to whatever team his son ends up playing for, and he's not watching with that intent eye to see what's going on. But in the case of the Giants, who, given what happened on Hard Knocks, how it peeled back, how the team kind of operates a little bit, given the market that the Giants are in and how the slightest little thing can sometimes be magnified a gazillion times. Do the Giants want to tempt that? Do they want to court that? Now, look, I get it. Some of you are saying that should be zero reason or have zero impact on what the decision is. But folks, it is something that needs to be considered. Do the Giants want to have, Shedeur's brother, who, was taping little behind the scenes things for his YouTube channel? Do they want, they can't stop it, but do they really want that kind of exposure? So this is just kind of another factor that has to be considered. When you look at a draft pick, there have been times over the years where guys have been taken off boards, guys with a lot of talent that have come off boards because of off-field things, whether it be character issues, whether it be the player's reputation, whether it be because the player just wasn't deemed a team player. There was once a very good player, won't tell you who he was, that I know for a fact was not on the Giants draft board. And this is a guy that I think would have gone in the first round had he not had concerns or not raised concerns about whether or not he'd be a good teammate. And he just was taken off the board because it was felt that he would be a problem in the locker room. So these things do factor in. Now, the question becomes, are the Giants to the point where they say, look, we're going to manage this. If, it does happen, we'll cross that bridge if we get to it. We don't care. We like the kid. We like the talent. We like the upside. That's all possible. But you also have to think long-term because, if things go south, Dable and Shane probably won't be back in 2026. Will a new head coach, a new GM, if that is the case, will they put up with, any kind of interference or any kind of, not interference, feedback, if you will, public feedback coming from, Deion Sanders? I just don't know, how the Giants feel about that. But I do know that that is a concern that, they basically have to sit down with Deion Sanders and maybe with Shedeur and his family and just say, look, here's the scenario. This ain't Boulder. This is New York. Everything gets magnified. I mean, a silly little game of catch with Malik Neighbors turned into a major story for like multiple days. You think that story would have taken off the way it did if it had happened in, Albuquerque or Boulder or, pick whatever town you want? I don't think it would have. So these are all factors that I think need to be considered in addition to the tape, in addition to the interviews. And look, I'm glad the Giants are doing due diligence, not just on Shedeur Sanders, but on all the quarterbacks. Shedeur Sanders actually broke, I think through his brother's social media channel or his YouTube channel. He said that, I think the Giants are going to be his second top 30 visit, which, do the Giants want all that out there? What's going on with the players? They're generally a closed mouth organization. If they don't mind it, then great. If they do, that's got to get brought under control before they commit to the skid. And look, I'd hate to see that be the reason why, maybe they don't draft him. I just would hate to see that because I do think Shedeur Sanders is a very good prospect. I think he would be a good quarterback. I think he would do well in this offense. But again, that's a legitimate concern for the Giants to have. All right, coming up next, some final thoughts on this start of a quiet period, the first, actually the second week without any kind of football activity, coming up right after this. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and in this segment, just a few final thoughts on all things Giants. One of the other things that I know the Giants have to make a decision on is the fifth-year option for Kayvon Thibodeaux, Evan Neal. Now, Evan Neal's fifth-year option, that's not getting picked up. I mean, I think we can all agree that that's not getting picked up. But what about Kayvon Thibodeaux? I think the Giants have until, I want to say May 1st to make that decision. I do think that they will pick up the option year. But that being said, what I am curious to see is what happens in the first round of the draft. If Abdul Carter falls down to the Giants at number 3, which I don't think will happen. I think Carter will be one of the first guys off the board, if not the first guy off the board. But if he's there at number 3, if I'm the Giants, I grab him, and I don't even think twice about it, especially after seeing how the Eagles were able to just absolutely destroy the Kansas City Chiefs with the pass rush. So if that is the case, do the Giants pick up Kayvon Thibodeaux's option year? I think regardless, they will. It can't hurt to have 3 pass rushers on the field at any given time. All right. Now, some of you will say, well, he's not worth the $16 million that he's going to get if they pick up the option year. Folks, I say it all the time. Pass rushers don't grow on trees. You have a chance to keep Kayvon Thibodeaux for another couple of years and see if he can't, take that next step, which thus far has really eluded him. Why wouldn't you? But if you have a chance to add Abdul Carter, you absolutely do it. And you don't think twice about it. I mean, that's how basically the NASCAR package, I don't know if you guys remember the old NASCAR package under Steve Spagnuolo, how that was born. The 4 aces, getting as many pass rushers on the field on obvious passing downs. Ernie Accorsi once said you can never have too many pass rushers. So why wouldn't you want to take a pass rusher if you could? Now, especially if you have your veteran quarterback, whether that's Matthew Stafford or somebody else, and if you can a shutdown cornerback in free agency, maybe, a DJ Reed, a Byron Murphy, a Carlton Davis, if you could get one of those guys, maybe that lessens the need for Travis Hunter. So again, free agency is going to tell us a lot about the direction the Giants are potentially going to go in. I think as far as the draft, it's going to clarify some of the issues, but at the end of the day, the Giants, they're going to go best available, which is how it should be. It's not going to necessarily be, just because we took, we signed a cornerback in free agency, it doesn't mean that, we don't have to take one. Now, what I do want to see, regardless of what they do in free agency, is I want to see the Giants start bringing in offensive line depth. All right. They didn't do it last year. I don't know why. But, again, we saw what happened this year when injuries hit. Stop building from the outside in the draft and start focusing on the inside out. because the Giants year after year are getting beaten in the trenches. That's got to stop. You've got to have young talent, especially on that offensive line, ready in the event that there is an injury. Right now, the Giants offensive line group, they should be set with Andrew Thomas, who unfortunately is becoming a little bit of an injury-prone player. Jermaine Illuminor, who is entering the final year of his contract. So if they don't extend him, it would help to have a tackle prospect in development. John Runyon Jr. is set at guard, all right, for at least for another year. John Michael Schmitz is still their center, although, I'd like to see him really take the next step. I don't think, he's taking the steps slowly. And then the right guard situation, is that going to be Evan Neal, who would be entering the final year of his deal? Is it going to be Jake Kubas? Is it going to be Joshua Azudu, who is also entering the final year of his deal? Are they going to bring back Greg Van Roten? So they may have another, long-term opening there that they'll need to plug. So get a guy in there that you can have ready, a guy who maybe has guard center ability or guard tackle ability, and just get that guy ready. Because right now, I've been saying this all along, the cupboard's bare. And that's something the Giants really, really need to address on that offensive line. And until they start doing that, anytime an injury pops up, that's all she wrote. We saw it last year. We saw it the year before. When are they going to learn? So hopefully this is the year they learn and they do something about it. All right, Giant fans, that is going to do it for this edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. As always, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you again tomorrow.